Wearable computing and connected devices are hot stuff these days, and smartwatches are leading the charge. Motorola's Moto 360 lineup has been a frontrunner in Android Wear-powered watches, and the company just kicked off a refresh to buff things out and beef things up for the product line. Hey there, it's Dave Altavilla for HotHardware.com with a look at the second-generation Moto 360 smartwatch. What time is it? It's Hello Moto time. Motorola delivers the Moto 360 Gen 2 and a pretty stylish pillbox hat case of sorts, and there's not much else here included with the device except a small lit pack and the watch's charging stand. It's an all-black plastic cradle that technically connects wirelessly to the device and fires up the digital clock and a cool battery life indicator when you drop it in its spot. It's just the thing for the nightstand. As is the case with other Moto devices, you can also customize your Moto 360 at the Moto Maker site, with different sizes to choose from for men and the new women's version of the watch as well. You get bezel and case color options, different finishes, as well as watch bands and watch faces to choose from. The new Moto 360 is available in two sizes for men, 42 and 46 millimeter, and a slimmed down variant for women with a 42 millimeter watch face. The women's version also has some different material accent choices like a rose gold metal finish and blush colors for the strap to choose from. There's also a Moto 360 Sport now that comes in a range of colors and looks and feels like a very different smartwatch versus the rest of the lineup. With built-in GPS and a UV coating on the display and IP67 water resistance ratings, it's the Moto 360 to consider for very active types. The test unit we selected is the larger 46mm men's watch, which sports a 233 ppi display at 360 by 330 resolution. The 42mm watches have a 263 ppi display at 360 by 325 res, and all models sit at 11.4 millimeters high. Not too chunky, but enough to feel sturdy and stand out in your wrist. The largest 46mm model has a 400 mAh battery, while the 42mm model remains at last generation's 300 mAh capacity. The lineup has 4 GB of internal storage paired with 512 MB of RAM and a pair of digital microphones that enable Dick Tracy style calling if your smartphone is nearby and paired over Bluetooth. Thankfully, the TI OMAP 3 processor from the previous gen has been put out to pasture, and all models are now powered by a snappier 1.2 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon 404 quad-core processor with Adreno 305 graphics. The display in the new Moto 360 does seem to offer a bit more pop versus the previous generation. Unlike the forthcoming Samsung Gear S2 watch, which sports an AMOLED display, the Moto 360 Gen 2 is based on IPS technology. Contrast and brightness are solid enough, and the watch face is visible even in daylight, and it looks sharper than the previous generation as well. However, it will be interesting to see how this display compares to the Gear S2 once we have that watch in hand for review. But Moto's quote-unquote flat tire design is still here, however, to allow its front sensors to peek out the face of the device. Personally, we don't mind the design approach at all, but if it's something you were hoping would be moved away from, that's simply not the case with this version. Beyond that, Motorola apparently learned a lot from its first Gen 360, and that's evident in the design of this new version. Gone are the internal lugs that made changing the straps so difficult, and in their place are external lugs that support standard watch bands from other manufacturers. The release mechanism is a simple cam pin that you push in from one side to release the band. The company also moved the 360's push button from the 3 o'clock position to a 2 o'clock position, presumably to prevent users from accidentally engaging it. It's a smart move, and we just love the Moto bat wings engraved on top of the button. On paper, and on the back side of the watch, the Moto 360 has a heart rate sensor, but in practice, it's still a little buggy. As with many green light sensors which claim to read your pulse without the need for a chest strap, readings were inconsistent. If you were hoping to use it to accurately track heart rate patterns through the course of a day or throughout an individual workout, Motorola still has a bit more work to do here, but perhaps a firmware update down the road can remedy things. On the software side, despite being around for a year now, Android Wear still sits at version 1.3. In other words, not a whole lot has changed. The graphics look nearly identical, and though the underlying architecture is still based on Android 5.1.1, Android Wear's voice commands aren't as sophisticated as you'll find with a Lollipop smartphone. The OK Google command still allows wearers to have their watch create reminders, calendar items, or query a sports score or call a contact, etc. Don't forget to feed the goldfish. Swiping through the Android Wear Cards interface is still fairly intuitive, though we occasionally still find ourselves getting lost in misguided swipes. Some watch faces now have shortcuts built right into them, however, for quick access, which helps a lot for the most used functions like the calendar, the weather, or fitness tracking. Swiping to the left lets you cycle through three main home screens. You can swipe to apps, where you'll then be able to swipe up and down through the list. Swipe left again for contacts, and finally one more time for Google Now, which offers scheduling, fitness tracking, Google Maps integration, voice to text, and voice search, among other features. Hangouts has also been improved, allowing you to respond to messages with a long list of canned replies or to draw your own emoji. Unfortunately, even though the new Moto 360 is now compatible with iOS devices as well, operation with an iPhone is decidedly less integrated and a much more janky experience to boot. Go figure. Swiping up on a notification on the home screen for an incoming text expands that notification, and swiping down dismisses it. Swiping to the left also lets you cycle through your text or incoming notifications, and of course you can cycle through various watch faces in the Moto 360 as well, some of which look pretty great. There are a number of traditional and modern watch faces here that not only have solid utility and functionality built in, but also dress up the watch and make it look like a real timepiece. Clocking in at a base price of $299 for the 42mm model, $329 for the women's 42mm version, and $349 for the 46mm unit that we tested here, the Moto 360 Gen 2 is a more refined, more powerful smartwatch, rocking the best of what Android Wear has to offer currently. The folks at Google and Motorola too, we suppose, just have to keep working to further refine and enhance Android Wear itself to improve on the experience. But be sure to stop by HotHardware.com for our full review of Moto's new bauble, and subscribe to us here for more tech product review, Jedi mind tricks, and event coverage, and of course, our 2.5 Geeks webcast. I'm Dave Altavilla for HotHardware.com, and that little fella is the Motorola Moto 360 Gen 2. Thanks for stopping by.